Hello everybody, Andre again, and I hope you enjoyed this little improv, which was based on the modes. And the modes is something that people find very mystifying and very intimidating, and it doesn't have to be. It's just a way to look at scales that's a bit different, and will open up tons of possibilities for your playing. So it's very important that you get a good feel for it. Before we begin, we should go back and really make sure we have everything down on major scales, minor scales, and the interval tables. And actually the circle of fifths, okay? So you can go ahead and look at this video and try to learn the exercises without it, but it's gonna be a lot of work. So if you can, please go back, or if you have already, then great. Make sure you have everything covered on major scales and minor scales, and then we can come back and tackle the modes and make the impossible seem actually pretty easy. The first and maybe easier, but not more useful way to look at modes is to use what are called the relative scales. Relative scales are simply what we saw for the minor scale. Remember when we did the minor scale we said, well, it's kind of like a major scale, but starting on the sixth note. So we took C, D, E, F, G, A, B, we started on A, and just used the same notes as C major, and we ended up with A minor, all naturals. And that's pretty cool, but eventually I told you that you should learn the formula for the scale so you don't have to always go back and refer to the main major scale. So it's the same thing with the modes, but in the beginning, to just ease into them, it's kind of useful to just look at it that way too. So let's say I have this scale, which is called the major scale, which is C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. This is already one of the 7 modes. It's the Ionian mode, and it's actually just a simple major scale. And let's take the example of A minor, right? So we know that we can take this same exact scale and just start on the 6th note and build an octave from that, and we'll find the minor scale. The minor scale also is a mode, and it's called the Aeolian mode. So if anybody comes up to you and say, well, I'm playing Aeolian, they're just being, a bit flashy, and they're just talking about the minor scale. And so you can take this same scale, start on the 6th note, and do that, and you have a minor scale. Now, we've done it with 2 notes, the 1st and the 6th, but there's a whole other bunch of notes, which is the 2nd note, 3rd note, 4th, 5th, and 7th note. And we can do it for each one of those, and so we can create a list of 7 modes. And the difference between them is that we consider root to root to be the first mode, which is called major, or Ionian. Then we can go from 2nd note to 2nd note. This is called Dorian. So we go from D to D, following the major scale of C. And as you can see, this sounds weird. It's not really major, it's not really minor. It's just a different sound. And this is called Dorian. And then we go to E, so it means from 3rd note to 3rd note, which is called Phrygian. So we go from E to E. Okay, so we go from the 4th note of the C major scale to the next 4th note, so from F to F, and we have Lydian, which is the 4th mode. Then we go from 5th note to 5th note, G to G. It's called Mixolydian. And then we go from A to A, which is minor. We saw that already. And from B to B, which sounds kind of weird, and it's called Locrian. Sounds very diminished, and it's a weird mode like that. So this is very useful. You can do it with any scale you know. Let's say you do it E major. It doesn't matter. Do E major. Hopefully you know by now that it has 4 sharps. And you can simply begin this scale on whatever note you want, and you'll get that mode. So if I begin by playing E, I'm playing E major. What if I start on the 3rd note, which is G sharp? Well, all I have to do is, what's the mode that starts from the 3rd note called? It's called Phrygian. So if I do it, I'm just going to be playing G sharp Phrygian. It's very simple. Okay, so you can just practice it a bit and get used to it. Learn the order of the modes, learn which mode is associated to what degree of the major scale, And then we're going to move on to the real fun stuff, which is parallel modes, and we're going to get right to it. Now that you've learned how to recognize modes and find them relatively, we have to do it in parallel. And in parallel simply means that what we do is we don't worry too much about, well, do I have to go back to the major scale, and then what degree should I start on, and then by the time, you know, whatever song you're playing or jamming to, it's done, it's over. So you don't want to do that. You want to access it really quick. Also, if you have any inspiration for a song or an idea, you want to be able to just jump to the right mode and play it. You don't want to work your way back to the major scale. That will kind of mess up your ear as well, because you'll hear your idea on a different sound, and then you'll lose it. So it's really important to be proficient and fluent with this, and the best way to do it is by using a simple formula for each of the modes. Remember when we did the minor scale and the major scale, we looked at how they could be built by using whole steps and half steps. So technically you could come to each one of the modes and try to figure out what their formula was. So maybe Lydian is whole, half, whole, half, and then the other one might be half step, whole step, whole step. All right, but then again, you end up in a situation where you have a whole bunch of formulas, and all that just gets in the way of the music, you know, and actually of the expression. So there's a better way, and it's the one that we introduced with the minor scale, which was, let's consider a major scale as simply 7 degrees, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. And all that means is, when we do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, it means we're using either a perfect interval, which is root, fourth, and fifth, or we're using a major interval, which means major second, major third, major sixth, and major seventh. So that's the root and the key of the major scale. Everything else will be a modification of it. So, for example, the minor scale, which, by the way, there's a mode that's called, Aeolian is actually the minor scale. It's just a cooler name for it. And Aeolian is made up of the same notes of the major scale, but we take the third note, the sixth note, and the seventh note, and we have to lower them a half step. Remember that? So we were in C major. And if we wanted to transform it to C minor, what we had to do was go and find the third note, which was E, the sixth note, which was A, and the seventh note, which was B, and lower those a half step. Okay, so we will get this sound. Okay, so again, as I said before, major and minor, that's very cool, but it's only 2 of them. So there must be out there 5 more formulas that we can use to create the 7 modes. And there are, and they're very, very simple. And I'm going to show you now a little graphic here where you can see exactly the changes. So there are 2 main differences. We can divide the modes in 2 families, major modes and minor modes. And what decides that is the third. So if the third is major, we're going to have a major mode. And the major modes are Ionian, of course, which is the major scale. And then Lydian and Mixolydian. Now the cool thing is you only have to remember 1 note that changes to create these 2. So from the major scale, we can modify the formula by raising the 4th note 1 half step. Okay? And that means in C major, we'll make the F, we'll make it sharp. And that's the Lydian mode. And it sounds like this. Okay? I love this mode. It's maybe one of my favorites. And then when we want the Mixolydian mode, all we have to do is take a look at the formula and see, well, all I have to do from a major scale is take the 7th note and lower it a half step. So we go from B, which is the major 7th of C, and just lower it 1 half step, which is on our interval table, just 1 column. So we go from B to B flat. And it sounds like this. Yeah, very, very easy. So this is our major modes. And we can just use them whenever we want. We have C major, we can raise the 4th and have Lydian, we can lower the 7th and have Mixolydian. Of course, all this will be explained throughout this video. We're going to take a detailed look at each one of them. All right, so let's now look at the minor modes. So the mother minor mode is C minor, where I take a major scale and lower 3rd, 6th, and 7th. Now again, from here, all I have to do is lower 1 note or raise 1 note to find the next 2 modes. So from a minor scale, I can take the 6th note, which is A flat, and raise it a half step. And it will sound like this. And this is called Dorian, which is the second mode. Or I can take a minor scale, take the second note, and lower it a half step, and I'll get Phrygian. So from C, that would be D. I make it D flat, and I get this sound. All right? So notice how my root is always C. I'm not trying to find whatever major scale these belong to. It's just one root, and I create the mode that suits me, or my music. And then there's one more mode, actually. We're going to include it. It's not completely correct. It's really a diminished mode, but we're going to include it in the minor modes. And it's very similar to this last one we did, the Phrygian, but we're also going to lower the fifth. And it looks like this. Here's the formula, and this is what it sounds like. Okay, very strange and very ominous, and it belongs to this kind of chords. You get this kind of sound. Okay, so this is really as simple as the modes can get, and I know it's a long explanation, and sometimes it's really hard to follow, but all you have to do is go back and listen to it, and listen to it, and listen to it, and try to apply it, and it's very, very simple. It's just 7 very, very basic formulas that will allow you to play any mode in any key whenever you need them. There's one very cool way that we can use the circle of fifths to find modes. Now that we know how to use them in parallel, which is transforming the basic formula and raise a note here and maybe flatten a note there to find other modes, there's a very, very cool way to relate all these modes to the major scale. Because I'm sure when I explained the relative modes, you were like, wow, that's cool because I can always go back to a major scale and find them. And when I explained the parallel, you might have been a bit lost because it's true that you lose that crutch of having the major scale assigned to each one of the modes. So there's a way around that, which is the circle of fifths. Okay, so if you look at a formula for any of these modes that I just explained to you, let's look at Lydian, for example. So Lydian is a major scale with the fourth note raised a half step. What does that mean on the circle of fifths? Well, let's say that I have C major to begin with. C major has, of course, no sharps and no flats, so it sits at 12 o'clock of the circle of fifths, right up here when there's no sharps and flats. If I raise a note, this scale of mine will eventually end up having one sharp. Okay? Now you might wonder, well, what sharp is it? The good thing and actually the great thing about all the modes is really they are major scales. We're just starting on different notes, so everything we do will always fit the circle of fifths. That means that C Lydian will have one sharp, and that sharp will be F. So C Lydian is the same thing as G major. Okay? So it's that scale. All your patterns that you learn for the cage system, they work. G major, but the problem is for you as a player is that you have to remember that the root is C now. If you play as if the root were G, it would just sound like a G major. So you have to focus on the C as the root. Okay, this would be C major, but I do it with an F sharp. And I get this more tense sound, which is the Lydian. Now, this scale that I played is G major. Okay, let's do another example. Let's take C again, C major. But let's say that I want to play the Dorian mode. Okay, so first thing, we go to C minor, which is the mother scale of Dorian. And as we did for the minor scales video, I realized that, well, C major has no sharps and no flats. But if I want to make it Aeolian, which is the same as minor, I have to add 3 flats. And so my C minor scale will have 3 flats. Now I look at the formula for Dorian, and I realize that if I want to transform a minor scale into a Dorian scale, I have to raise the 6th note. That means that I have now 3 flats, but one of them will be lost because I'm raising a note. So a sharp and a flat, erase themselves. And so now I have a scale that only has 2 flats. And so C Dorian is a scale that has 2 flats. Now, what major scale has 2 flats? I can go back to my circle of fifths, and I realize that B flat major has only 2 flats. So C Dorian is B flat major. Okay, and you can do this with every single mode. You can always relate them back to your major scales by simply checking it out on the circle of fifths. What does that mean for you? Mainly it means that until you're very, very, very comfortable with the modes and you can just take any note and build any mode around it, you can always recycle your cage positions. Okay, like for example, I just talked about C Dorian. So if you want to play C Dorian and you're a bit lost and you don't know where you're at, just play B flat major. But make sure that to you the root is the C. Don't ever fall into that, mistake of just playing B flat, because eventually your ear will just slide you all the way back to B flat major, because major and minor modes are the ones that you're most used to. So you have to focus on the root. Okay? So that's really how you relate all the modes to the circle of fifths. And now we're going to move on and look in a lot more detail at all the major modes. We're going to do Lydian and Mixolydian, and then we're going to go to the minor modes and look at all of them very, very well and in a lot of detail. So this is our first major scale, major mode actually. It's called the Lydian mode. And since I realized that this kind of stuff is pretty confusing in the beginning, and actually, the fun part is that when you learn it, it's the easiest thing you can ever think of. But it's really hard to explain to somebody who doesn't know it. So every time we do a mode, we'll go over all the little details again. So the Lydian mode is the fourth mode that we build starting from the fourth note of any major scale. And the most useful way, of course, is parallel. So what we do is take a major scale, any major scale, and raise the fourth note. Okay? So I was just playing E major here. And what I was doing is I was playing E major, but to make it Lydian, I took the fourth note of E major, which is A, and I made it A sharp. Okay, and also you notice how now that I'm playing to a drone is simply a note that's held out. I was just playing E's in different octaves. You could hear a very different sound. This doesn't sound like a major scale at all. When we were doing them all in sequence, your ear kind of goes back to major and tries to relate them to a major scale. But now that I'm really just focusing on Lydian, it's a totally different sound. And so the Lydian scale, it's built like that, just raising the fourth note. It has a very peculiar sound because the fourth is one of the pillars of Western music, from the Gregorian chants, all that. The fourths were very important, and now we get rid of it. We got rid of the fourth and use the raised fourth, which is the most dissonant note on the chromatic scale. It sounds like this. And I just love the tension. I really like this mode a lot. And you can play it over, of course, a drone, like I just did, or you can play it over a major chord. Okay, so each mode has a chord that fits it, and a great chord for this mode is either E major. You can use if you use distortion, you can actually use E fifth, and it sounds good because it doesn't give any information that's in conflict with the mode. You can use E major seventh, and all kinds of different modes. Now this is information you can find out there, and it's really encyclopedic. All you have to do is go and look. Well, they say I can play E major seventh for Lydian. Great, you can use it. So I don't have to explain too much about that. So I hope you like the sound of it. Now what we're going to do is look at the 5 positions of the cage system for this mode. And let's just a couple of words about that. 5 positions of the cage system never change. So they will always be called whatever your pattern of roots is, that's the order of the system. So if I'm playing an E here and an E here, this is always my first position, okay? And so I have to change the notes around this pattern to fit whatever mode I'm playing. And so if you get lost by looking at these positions, they're the same as the major positions and minor positions, but the root changes. And it's key that you understand it. Never fall back to the major scale or the minor scale. That's relative. You always have to consider this as the root. Okay? So before we do that, one more thing. If we relate the major scale to the Lydian scale on the circle of fifths, we would have, in this example, I was playing E, so we would have E major that has 4 sharps, but E Lydian will have 5 sharps because we raise the 4th note. And so E Lydian is the same as B major, which has 5 sharps. So B major is the mother scale of E Lydian. That means that the 5 positions I'm just going to give you now from Closeup will be the same positions on the cage system from B major. But to you, the root always has to be E. Okay? And we're going to do this for all the modes, so eventually by just doing it and doing it and doing it, you'll catch it if it's a bit confusing for now. So for now, just look at these 5 positions, please, from Closeup. Study them, memorize them, and these will always be your 5 positions for the Lydian mode. And that's the sound of the Mixolydian scale. The Mixolydian scale, again, is a major mode, so our parent scale is a major scale. In this case, I was actually playing A Mixolydian. That means I started from A major and transformed it to get the Mixolydian sound. And all I have to do for that, as you can see from the formula, is take the 7th note of the major scale and lower it a half step. Okay, so we have an A major scale, which has A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp, and A. I find the 7th note, which is G sharp, lower the half step, that takes me to G, and then I can just play the scale, and I get this sound. Now you can hear now, if I do it like this, A major, and then A minor, A Mixolydian, it's not really that big of a difference, but it's incredible how alive and obvious it becomes when you play with a drone note. In this case, I was just playing A's, just octaves. Okay, so only A, but just that information, just the root, makes the whole thing blossom. So it's pretty cool. And with chords, which we don't have time to get into today because that will be another 10 videos. But when you figure out what chords fit each mode, then you'll actually be able to hear it even more sometimes. Okay, but the root is enough. This is really the purpose of this video, is to get you familiarized with what the modes are, how to find them, and what they sound like. And then you make up your mind. You know, I like this one, I don't like that one, I would use this one in my songs, but I would never even touch that one. You know, so that's up to you. So one more thing before we move on to the cage system, so we can explore all 5 positions for it, is relating it to the circle of fifths. So we go to the circle of fifths for the major scales, and we find A major at 3 o'clock. That means it has 3 sharps. So we have A, B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G sharp. We take one out. We are left with 2. So now what scale has only 2 sharps? And that's D major. Okay, so that means that the 5 positions I'm going to show you now, they're going to look a lot like D major. Actually, it is going to be D major, right? But for you, the root is A. That's key, okay? You have to always remember that the root is the one of your mode, not of the parent major scale. So let's see from close-up all these positions. Please memorize them again. And that way you'll always be able to play Mixolydian from any root that is ever thrown at you. You can just start improvising in the Mixolydian mode. Very well. Now, before we move on to the minor modes, I'm just going to give you a little tour of all of them again, just to refresh things. And so I'm just going to use the same loop with just a little A note that repeats. And what I'm going to do is play just 1 octave of each of the mode. Okay, so it's going to be very simple. I'm going to play A major, then I'm going to play A Lydian, and then I'm going to play A Mixolydian. And I'm just going to spend just a few seconds on each of them, and then you can hear the difference, you know, and this will cement the idea in your head. Okay, so it goes something like this. So you see, I've gone through all these 3 modes, and I've done it in a way that's as not obvious as possible. So you can be actually more drastic with it. You can actually hit the notes that make up the mode all the time to hear it better. But now you can also see how you can use the modes in the same solo or in the same melody, and you can just go from shift just a little bit towards a bit more tension, switch a little bit towards some release, maybe some relaxed attitude, like maybe with this G. Okay, it sounds a little more relaxed than this. Okay, and then maybe you can make things a bit more ambiguous. You can go and then resolve them like that. Okay, so there's all these colors and they're available to you. The only thing you have to be careful is what harmony you have underneath. So depending on the chords you're using, you might be able to access one of the modes or not. And this again always goes back to the same formula. So if you want to play a Mixolydian scale over a chord, you have to make sure that chord doesn't have any intervals that is in conflict with it. Okay, so very quickly, if we're not going to get into chords, but if you have the Mixolydian mode uses the flat 7, so you have to make sure you don't have any chord where you play Mixolydian that has a major 7th, okay, so because that will be a conflict. All right, so this is the major sounds of the modes, and now we're going to move on to the minor modes, which are also very cool. So before we do it, please go back to the circle of fifths and take out your minor scale circle of fifths, because that's how we're going to relate all the minor modes to the parent scale, which is the minor scale. And this is the Dorian mode. Again, so we went to the darker side of the modes, which is a bit more sad, maybe a bit more, not as happy and open as the major modes. And this mode is the first that we're going to look at from the minor modes. Just a very quick introduction to minor modes. Again, all we do is take the parent scale, which is the minor scale, which is a major scale with third, sixth, and seventh notes flattened. So now that we have this formula, all we have to do is transform it and find whatever notes, modes we want. So the first example that I played, this was in D. Okay, so I was playing D Dorian. So let's see how we can make this work. All right, so first thing is, let's see where D minor is. Okay, so how does D minor work? D minor works like this. We have D, E, F, G, A, B flat, C, and D. Okay, they're almost all natural. They're just a B flat in there. And then we look at the formula for the Dorian mode, and we say, okay, well, it's the same as a minor scale, so it's the same as this, but we have to take the sixth note and raise it a half step. Okay, so that means that if the note is flat, it will become natural. If the note is natural, it will become sharp. And so we have a look at the scale, and we see, okay, well, this is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Our sixth note is a B flat. And now we have to raise it a half step. Okay, so we play a B natural. And we have a Dorian scale. It's that easy. Now on the circle of fifths, how it works is like this. So we go and find our D minor scale, and we find that D minor sits at 11 o'clock. That means it has one flat, which we already know because we just did it. And we're going to lose that flat. And so the scale will move up one step on the circle of fifths, and actually we realize that D Dorian is the same as A minor. So no sharps and no flats. And it's actually the same as C major. So again, we're going to look at the patterns from the cage system throughout the neck. And so again, you'll see a striking similarity between D Dorian and C major and A minor. But to us, again, as always, the root is D. So these are D scales. It just happens that they share the same fingering as C major and A minor, so it's great if you can use that to memorize it, but it's not defining of the mode. Okay, don't look at it that way, otherwise you just end up playing in minor. Okay, what you want to do is actually play the mode, so make sure all the roots of your positions are the Ds. Okay, and so that's great. By the way, all the close-ups we're going to do in C. Okay, so we're always going to relate them to C. So we're going to look at C Dorian now, and you can do that, learn it. Make sure you understand that each root carries its own mode, and that way you'll always be able to play Dorian modes wherever you want, and for whatever chord you think fits, and for whatever drone note. right, so this mode is obviously the Phrygian mode, is one of the most recognizable ones. And you can hear that very, very peculiar sound, and that's the flat second. Okay, so that means we take a regular minor scale and we take the second note and we lower the half step. Okay, this barely ever happens with modes, and so that's why it sounds so striking. And we get this sound. Okay, so it's sometimes associated with Spanish music or some Middle Eastern music. And it's a really cool mode. And again, the formula says, let's take a minor scale, which is B minor. In this case, I was playing in B. So let's take maybe this octave here. We have B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and B. And then we have to take the second note, which was a C sharp, lower the half step. So we only have B and C now, no B sharp. And so that's what where the sound comes from. We have this instead of huge difference, just changing one note. And so let's relate it back to the circle of fifths, and let's check it out. So B major had 5 sharps. We transform it to minor, which means it has 2 sharps. So you can see on the circle of fifths of minor scales, B minor has 2 sharps. And having 2 sharps, we have to now see what happens when we apply the mode formula. And the mode formula says you have to take the second note and lower it. That means we're going to lose one of these sharps too, which, as we just saw, was the C sharp. So this scale had 2 sharps when it was minor, but now only has 1 sharp when it's Phrygian. So what scale has only 1 sharp? It's G major. Okay, so G major is the same thing as B Phrygian. Okay, it's really that simple. And when you play it, you have to remember, as always, when we look at the 5 positions of the cage system, that it will certainly remind you of G major, or E minor, which is the same thing, but you will not want to go there. You know, you really want to make sure your scale, again, starts on a B, and all the sounds of the scale relate back to B, because you're just one little step away from doing this, playing the same scale, and now we're all happy again, because your ear brings you back as soon as possible. Your ear will pull towards either major or minor, okay, because that's what they're used to. And so you have to be careful, always stick to the notes that are your roots, and everything else relates to it. So the significance of this scale comes from this interval from your root, which is B, to the C. The moment you let it slip to either E or G, this note C here will lose its function. Okay, it will not be the flat second. It will be the 4th, or it will be the 6th, or whatever. You need it to be the flat second. And then you get this idea. All right, let's have a look. And that's very, very, very strange sounding, and it's called the Locrian mode. And the Locrian mode, we included with the minor modes, but it's a bit different because it has a flat 5, which makes it a diminished mode. You won't use it very, very much, but for the sake of completion, I'm going to add it to this video. So this mode actually changes 2 notes from the minor scale. Okay, and the notes are the second is flat, just like Phrygian, but also the 5th will be flat. And so I was playing in B, so I can go to my formula and figure out, well, B minor has the same notes as we just saw before. We have B, C sharp, D, E, F sharp, G, A, and B. That's my B minor scale. And then I say, well, okay, let's take the second note and flatten it. So from C sharp, we go down to C. But then when we reach the 5th, which is F sharp, we also have to look at the formula and say, well, the formula asks for the 5th note to be lower the half step. So F sharp becomes F. And then we have this scale. Okay, so it sounds a bit like the Phrygian note because of this flat second, but then it has the flat 5, which sounds like a diminished chord. Actually, the basis for this is this. You'll play it on top of one of those chords. Okay, so let's look at it from the perspective of circle of fifths. We have B minor, which is our parent scale, which only has 2 sharps. And so it sits at 2 o'clock, but now we have to lose those 2 sharps because one is the second that is flattened, and then we've also flattened the 5th. So we lose both of them. The result is that B Locrian is the same as A minor or C major, so no sharps and no flats. Okay? And it sounded pretty weird, but you can kind of force it into sounding all right when you play. You know, actually, this kind of mode sometimes is used in jazz a lot, but also in heavy metal. You can do it when you play only fifths, and maybe not even that. You know, and you play stuff like, you know, you get these very dissonant sounds, and that's where the Locrian fits. Okay, but that's unfortunately beyond the scope of what we can do in one video on the modes, so we just leave it for now like that over the drone. And again, we're going to look at all the possible positions on the cage system for C Locrian. Okay, and again, I am sorry to repeat this, but it's very important. So even if you remember it out of boredom, you have to remember it that whatever the position is on the cage system and whatever it reminds you of as far as major and minor scales are concerned, to you the root is the root of the mode. Okay, so this will look like C major or A minor, but it's not. It's B Locrian. So your roots are here and here, and so to you this will be a position of B, not of C or A. Right? So this was the final mode, and let's check out the cage system, and then I'm going to give you just one little more tip that you can use to really learn them and get them into your fingers and your ears. And so this is the end of the minor modes, and what I'm going to do now is again do what we did for the major scale and the major modes. We're going to play all of these modes over just one drone, and I selected A because it's pretty simple. With A, the mother scale is A minor, which has no sharps and flats. Okay, so I'm just going to play a few seconds. Also, I'm going to stick one octave, again, only one octave, and just play just a little bit of the mode, down and up the scale, and then maybe I'll switch things around just a little bit, but I will never leave the octave, right? And we'll play it in this order. We'll play minor, which is the parent scale. Then we'll go in order of appearance, which is Dorian, Phrygian, and then Locrian. Okay, just a little improv, really short and really simple, so you can, again, try to memorize the sound of each of the modes. Okay, so this is the A drone, and this is what the modes will sound like. Right, very short and simple, and we went through all four of them. Now, I was going to do one with all the possible modes, major and minors, but I think that would be best left to you. So please record yourself just playing a little drone. You can actually program it on a keyboard or whatever you want to do. Just make sure it holds for a long time. And don't do it with chords, all right? You have to do it with just one drone, otherwise some of the modes will not fit. So just take a drone and then go through the whole cycle. You can do maybe majors and minors, separate, but then really try to do major, Dorian, Phrygian, Lydian, Mixolydian, Aeolian, Locrian, and that's it. That's 7 of them. And play them all one next to the other, and try to recognize them. Wow, this sounds really major, and this sounds minor, and this is tense, and this is mellow, and this other one is kind of scary, and this is uncomfortable to play, and this is easy, and so on. And it doesn't matter, that if you can recognize the parent scale and you can relate them to a parent scale like major and minor, that's great. And that will actually sometimes will get you out of trouble because maybe you're lost and you can always go back to the position. But just make sure you do what I said, which is never let the root of the mode escape you. You always have to understand what the root is and base whatever you're doing off of that. Okay, never refer back to the major scale or the other minor scale, which is the parent scale, because then you'll be lost, because then everything will sound major and minor, and then you'll kind of think that, well, the modes are not such a big deal, they sound the same as a major and minor scale. All right, that's the main thing I hear about the modes, and that's the reason why people think it sometimes. Okay, so I'm going to give you one more exercise in the next section, which is going to be very useful, and then we'll call it a day for now, and move on to another video. And so now the final exercise is something that you can do whenever you want, and you can do with the guitar and eventually without the guitar, and you probably guessed it, is to actually sing the modes. And by singing the modes, you will fill in all the blanks, because remember we did it for the major scale and we did it for the minor scale. And that gave us access to the most important intervals. We did the fifths, we did the fourths, we learned how to recognize the difference between a major third and a minor third, and so on. But there's a few spots that we missed, right? For example, we never had to play a flat 5. We never had to play a flat second. That never happened. Okay, and even if the other notes we know how to play, the interactions between them can really throw your ears off. You can go like, wow, I thought this sounded like a fifth, but when I hear it after this note, it may take a different meaning, than when you hear it, for example, after this note. It just sounds different. And so one great way to practice is this. You take the major scale and you sing it a few times, like we did in the first, in the major scale video. So you go C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, like that. And once you're comfortable, you can do it without the guitar. And then you take the formula and you say, okay, let's do Lydian, right? So we have to change the fourth note, which is F, to an F sharp. Try to guess it. Try to sing, and try to see if you can sing it on top of it. C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C, like that. Can I sing the mode? Do you actually know what the mode sounds like? Otherwise, what's the point of playing it, right? When you're improvising, how do you decide, now I'm going to use Lydian, and now I'm going to use Mixolydian or whatever? You can only do that, honestly, if you know what they sound like before you play them. Okay, so it's very important that you get all the modes under your ears. Under your fingers and in your ears. So with minor is the same. Can you take a minor scale and sing it? C, D, E, F, G, A, B, C. Can you do that? Perfect. So now, can you modify any of these notes to fit a mode? Can we maybe take the sixth and make it 1/2 step higher? Can I do that with my voice? And can I actually predict how it will sound before I play it? Okay, so that's a great exercise. And then you can also apply this to the next exercise we did, which was singing every note against the root. So we did this with both major and minor. And what we did was C, D, C, E, C, F, C, G, C, A, C, B. Remember that? We were always referring back to the C. So now by changing the mode, you can also relate each interval to its root directly without, because for example the F sharp now will come after 2 notes. And so that could actually affect my judgment. It would be very helpful to get the general idea of the mode, but it won't be so helpful if I want to just understand what an augmented fourth sounds like. And so I can just do the Lydian mode and go C, D, C, E, C, F sharp, and try to get that sound into my ear. Okay? And so you can do it with all the modes, and eventually the goal is to be able to, from any note, be able to sing the whole mode up and down. Okay, so that's the objective, and that's what will actually give you the tools to actually go out and go, well, I want to play Phrygian because I know exactly what Phrygian is going to sound like over this chord, and that's what I want to play. And you won't go, well, I'm going to try Lydian and see what happens. I'm going to try Phrygian and see what happens, because that's as bad as just playing the pentatonic scale because you don't know any other scales. Okay, so please do that, and this is not something you'll be able to do in a week or a month. Maybe you have to really work on it constantly. So maybe do 10 or 15 minutes every day of just ear training. Very well, congratulations for reaching the end of this video and for following along one of the most intense videos we've done so far. And there's one thing that I would suggest you explore further, which is the relationship between the modes and chords and chord progressions. Okay, a complete series on the modes will take probably as many videos as we're doing for this whole project. Okay, and it won't be as useful actually, because it will just be information upon information. So this that we've done today really covers all the basics. We do all the sound of the modes, how the formulas work, how we find them, how we relate them to major and minor scales. And if you do the ear training part, it will be a huge tool in understanding scales, modes, chords, everything else, because we'll cover all the possible intervals. Okay, so it's a very, very useful video, but it's also one that will require your complete attention and quite a bit of work. So again, congratulations for reaching the end, but for some of you at least, the work begins now. You'll have to go back and explore this video in more detail. And so I want to thank you for following along so far, and I'll see you on the next video.